to week one of CYB200 Cybersecurity Fundamentals. Again, Mr. Wallington, your instructor, and let's get into this. Great, just excited. Aren't you excited? Okay, maybe I'm a little over the top this week. All right, so we look at Module 1, Week 1. What are we doing? This is when we really get into some of the basic tenets of cybersecurity. And we're going to start talking about, fundamental cybersecurity design as opposed to just the basic cybersecurity concepts. You're going to start creating a playbook this week as well, and really get into risk management. I tell you, that's a huge area that many times we overlook because we are so excited and we want to jump into the techie stuff. But you know what this thing of cybersecurity really is all about? Risk management. No different than, in your home or wherever, your job, anywhere, you may be. We manage risk every day in our lives. Every day you get up, get into your vehicle, drive to work or to the store or to the school, or wherever it may be, you are managing risk. And so that's a big part of what we do. So some of the learning objectives we're gonna tackle this week, like I said, we're gonna look at the role of your cybersecurity professional, discuss some of the different roles in cybersecurity with your peers. There's a lot of different roles, a lot of different things you can do. I know, and that's one of the things I think that really sometimes confuses a lot of people. Well, what do I do? I've gone to college, I got a degree, but I still don't know what I am doing. What am I supposed to do? So there's a lot of different roles associated with cybersecurity. And again, like I said, we're going to start your playbook, and so you can start capturing some of the data. Now, the reason we do the playbooks, because now when you go out into industry, into the field, a lot of organizations, that's how they manage cybersecurity day-to-day with playbooks. So that if you're in a SOC, a Security Operations Center, or a NOC, a Network Operations Center, there are playbooks that if there's an incident, if something comes up, you go to the playbook, and it walks you through, how to mitigate that potential threat or that risk. This week, actually, in our textbook, you got 3 chapters you're going to review. Chapter 1, what is cybersecurity, of course. Chapter 3, risk management. Chapter 4, risk management and importance to the organization. And speaking of risk management, that's what we're going to spend a little time now talking about risk. Risk. What is risk? Guys, this is one of the most important statements that you will ever read in your entire life. More important than your marriage certificate. Yes. Well, maybe not. But it's close. No. Understanding risk. What is risk? It's the likelihood of a threat agent taking advantage of a vulnerability and the corresponding business impact. So basically what does risk do? It brings together these 3 areas, right? It brings threat, assets, and vulnerabilities together, and that is how we get our risk. That's the measurement of risk. So, like I say, it ties vulnerabilities, threats, and likelihood of exploitation together. So when we think about this thing called risk, all right, if I told you that this morning I was in such a hurry to get to work because I love my job that much, I was in such a hurry to get to work that I left my back door, patio door, unlocked. Is that risk there? Yes. Or is it? First of all, do we have threats in our neighborhood? Yes. In any neighborhood you go to, there's threats. There's people who want to, take advantage, break into your house, do whatever they want to do. Vulnerability? Yes. I have a door that's open. That's a vulnerability. But here is where the rubber meets the road. What is the likelihood of exploitation? Okay. Now, to understand that, I'm going to have to give you a little more information. So I told you that I left my patio door open when I went to work this morning. But what I didn't tell you is that I live on the 22nd floor of a high-rise apartment. So you see, now the threat vector changes, the attack surface changes to where even though I may have left my door open, the likelihood of exploitation has decreased tremendously because the likelihood of someone climbing 21 floors on the outside of a building to get to my little small patio deck that I have the door open is pretty low. Now, let's say if I lived in a cul-de-sac where my backyard is facing open to a high school where kids walk up and down all the time going back and forth. So now you see the likelihood of exploitation could possibly be a little higher. So that's why understanding this risk formula, this risk statement is so important. Vulnerabilities, threats, but really it comes down to the likelihood. Now, not only likelihood of exploitation, but the next part right here, and the corresponding business impact. At the end of the day, that's what a decision maker, that's what wants to know. That's what your program managers want to know. Okay, got it. There's risk, there's vulnerabilities, there's threats. You give me the likelihood of exploitation, but what's the so what? Okay, what is this going to cost me with respect to dollars, with respect to exploitation of information, intellectual property? That's what we have to be able to articulate. And how do we do that? We become the translators in an organization. As cybersecurity, and this is what I tell my team that I have, about 8, and the number changes because I have people who work for me that I don't technically manage. So that number changes, but anywhere from 8 to 12 people that day to day that I'm responsible for their workload. And this is what I tell these ISOs and data transfer agents all the time. Learning to speak the right language, very important. Here's why. Cybersecurity, and we're going to go through this class, and you're going to hear these 3 words over and over until you become nauseous. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That's what we speak. That's the 3-legged stool, I call it. That is the cornerstone of what we in cybersecurity. We maintain confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But if you're talking to your program manager, who is probably not a security or IT or network guy, you know what his language is? They speak cost, schedule, performance. You go in talking to your PM about CIA, you're going to get this, deer in the headlight look, because he really doesn't care. He doesn't care about controls. What he cares about, what is that control going to cost me? Is it going to impact the schedule, my delivery schedule? Is it going to impact the performance of the asset, the widget, or whatever it is my engineers are building? And what does engineers speak? Question, hypothesis, results. Have an idea. We see that there's something that needs to be built. We got an idea on how to build it, and let's get results. Do you think they're concerned about security? No. The security is the last thing they want to talk about, because all security is going to do is hinder me getting to results. Because you're going to want to come talking about security controls, and we need to have these in place and that in place, and have you checked this? No, we just want to build it. We want to make it work. So in your organization, you've got multiple people who are speaking multiple languages. And to be successful in cybersecurity, it's important that you learn to translate those languages. So not that we throw CIA out the door, but we learn to translate CIA into terms that the program manager understands. That if we don't implement these controls, the likelihood of us not passing security test is going to be higher, which is then going to impact your schedule. We won't be able to make our deliveries because we won't be able to have it pass the test that we need. Or we're going to have to go back in and retrofit things so the performance of your output product could be impacted because we didn't bake security in. And now we're going to go try to strap it on and making these last minute aftermarket changes. It's like, I don't know if you've ever gone to, if you needed brakes, you could take your car to the dealer and get OEM or original equipment made by the manufacturer. 99% chance they're probably going to fit the first time and work. Or you can go to a fly-by-night garage who are getting second and third rate parts, and it's a good possibility those brake pads are not going to fit. Or if they do fit, they're going to squeak, they're going to rattle, they're going to knock and do other things. So because we didn't bake it in. So learning to translate languages and learn how to partner with your program managers, your engineers to reach an operational capability. Because I'm telling you guys, at the end of the day, these 2 individuals would love it if we would just go away. Cybersecurity, for the most part, we don't make an organization any money. We don't make them any money. Now we provide cost avoidance in the event that there is an exploitation, but by and large we don't make the company any money. So if it was up to them, we could just go away, and the program managers could meet their cost, schedule, performance metrics. Engineers can go in the labs in the back room, or software developers or whoever it may be, and we can develop and build stuff unhampered, unhitched, by security requirements. So that's why if you want to be successful, learn to speak the language and learn to understand the operational impacts, the operational need, and how we can bring, we can mitigate risk allowing that program manager to be on target, on budget, and on schedule to provide a product to a customer. Learning to translate the how, not the how, the why. All right, so if we take a look at the components of risk, what is a vulnerability? It's a weakness that may provide an attacker the opportunity to obtain unauthorized access. Guys, let me tell you something. Cybersecurity is about pretty much one thing: access control. And it's been that way, all of security, not just cyber, physical security. It's all about access control. From the time that the first caveman says, "Hey, look, I've got something of value. I got a stick, and with this stick, boom, I can kill T-Rex, and I can drag it back into my cave, and my wife can cook T-Rex, and my kids can eat T-Rex, and I'm happy. I fed my family." And the other caveman looks over there, and goes, "Hey, I want that stick." He's happy. His family's fed. His wife ain't nagging. He's happy. I need his stick. So security started right there, because the one caveman is, I've got to control access to who gets my stick. I might have to sleep with my stick. I might have to put my stick over here behind in the cave over here on this side so nobody can get to it. That's all we're doing today, except now we're looking at technical means with data. Who has access to the information? Who has access are they authorized, unauthorized? So when we think about vulnerability, that's a weakness that could provide an attacker an opportunity to gain unauthorized access. Threats, what are threats? Threats exist everywhere. We got all types of threats. Natural threats, man-made threats, perceived threats. And just because something is a threat doesn't necessarily mean that it's a danger, until many times you have to have what we call a threat agent. That's an actual person or an entity that now wants to take advantage of a vulnerability. Because let's say that you have a large field that has nothing planted in it, and it comes a hailstorm. Is a hailstorm a threat? Yes, it is. Is it a threat to your field that just has weeds in it? No, it's not. But now, if I have a hailstorm and it's moving into an urban area, now that entity is going to take advantage of vulnerabilities like people's cars and everything else, and can do a lot of damage. So we look at threats, then exposure. This is really a big one. How exposed are you? What does your attack surface look like? One of the things we always want to do with security is we want to reduce our attack surface. Minimize the attack surface. Bring things in where you have visibility, where you have controls that will reduce the amount of exposure that you have. And that's why we park our cars in the garage. That's why we put fences up around our houses. Why? We want to reduce the our exposure. And a countermeasure. What is a countermeasure? That is something that we put in place. We call it a control, a security control that we're going to talk more about, to mitigate potential risk. My wife and I, we had a fence put up. We had our catalytic converter on our van stolen. Somebody just walked right in the yard with a Sawzall and cut the catalytic converter out. Well, so we had to put up some countermeasures. Why? We had a vulnerability. Our vehicle was sitting out in our driveway, but still the attack surface was big. The people who drive by and see, oh, there's a van. That's an easy, it's setting up off the ground, easy catalytic converter to get to. Were there threats? Yes. Every day someone is driving by, walking by, trying to see what they could steal, where they could take advantage. Threat agent, you got it. Some guy with a Sawzall, a cordless saw, and a hacksaw blade, ready to take it. Exposure, it was wide exposure. So now we know what we had to do? Put in a countermeasure. We put up an 8-foot fence with a gate. What did that do? One, it reduced the exposure. People drive by, they can't see the vehicles in our driveway now. They don't see anything. So less likely, so I've reduced the likelihood of the attack. Is it still vulnerable? Yes. Is it still threats? Yes. But we've reduced the likelihood. So now we talked about risk and we put controls in place. So what types of actions do we do to mitigate risk? There are certain steps, certain things that we do, and this isn't just in cybersecurity. This is not just cybersecurity. It's also in your life, day to day. We do these things. One thing that we can do is take a drink of water. It doesn't mitigate risk, but it sure does taste good. Well, one thing we can do is we call avoidance. Eliminate the cause. You know, if I don't want my catalytic converter stolen on my van, you know what I can do? I can get rid of the van. There, avoidance. Gone. The van's gone, so I don't have to be concerned about the catalytic converter getting stolen again. Isn't always the case with everything. You can't always avoid risk. I can transfer it, and which we did that. We had insurance on our van. You can buy insurance. And within the world of security now, yes, there is cybersecurity insurance that will protect your organization, you know, against many different types of cybersecurity attacks, whatever, you know, they may be. But you can buy it. Now, you have to be careful with buying insurance because you have to understand what is this insurance actually, you know, providing me. So understanding insurance, cybersecurity insurance, it's good to have somebody with some risk analysis in your organization so you know what you're buying. But you can transfer risk. Also, you can accept it. Accepting, that's just acknowledging, yes, the risk exists, and we're just going to accept the consequences and move on, have a great day. But this is what we try to do the most within the world of cybersecurity. We try to mitigate. How can we protect? How can we reduce the exposure to protect against attacks? That's why we put security controls in place. We're going to talk about like the NIST 853, which is a set of security controls. You have the CIS security controls, ISO, 72001, COBIT. There's a litany of different security control frameworks that we use. But NIST is one that I'm used to, that I've spent a lot of time working with. So that's one that I'm very familiar with. And we are the key stakeholder in risk mitigation. So when we think about a risk, again, what can we do with it? We can avoid it. We can transfer it with insurance. We can accept it, or we can mitigate. Things to do with risk. Now, this is something I like to walk through because many times, because there are so many different roles and so many different overlays between cybersecurity and IT. I know it's a question that some of you guys have, but do I want to be an IT guy? Do I want to be a cyber guy? Do I want to be a cyber analyst, auditor? What do I want to do? So I try to use this little scenario to show the difference between IT and cyber. So what I call it is cyber's role in risk mitigation is like making shaved ice. Well, kind of like making shaved ice. What am I talking about? All right, here's a customer. This kid loves shaved ice, especially the raspberry. So he's the end user in an organization or a customer that our organization is going to provide shaved ice to. All right, so to get that to this kid, what has to happen? Well, starts with water. We get city water, comes in through the pipes, and that's kind of what our IT networking guys are. They provide the connectivity. Okay, I'm simplifying this, do a lot more. But they're the plumbers in our organization that's providing connectivity from an ISP provider, from some other place into our organization. And now that water comes in, and where does it go? Well, to us, cybersecurity, the CIA guys. We're like the city water inspector. What do you mean? Well, let me tell you what I mean. These two guys have very similar competencies, very similar skill sets. If you want to talk networking, yes, they both understand networking. If you want to talk network security, they both would have some competencies in network security, just like a plumber. You want to talk rise over run and water flow angles, things like that. Yeah, a city water inspector and a plumber both share those skill sets. Focus is different. Here's why. The plumber is concerned about getting your water into the building with the right amount of pressure. The city water inspector, he's concerned about the quality of the water in the pipe. If you ask the plumber, can you tell me the pH balance of this water? Or maybe what's the rust content? He's probably going to give you the deer in the headlight look. I don't know. But what I do know, if you walk over to that shower and you turn the knob, you're going to get some really hot water. That's what I know. So they're concerned about getting the water into the building. City water inspector, like us, we're concerned about the quality of the information, the quality of the data, the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of that data. So similar skill sets, very different focus. So now that the quality of that water is good, now it enters in a business some type of process, some type of business process where we add value, okay? A value analysis process. And what does that process consist of? What we call the value stream. This is where we take something in, add value to it, and send it out. Wherever you work today, that's what your company does. That's what your organization does. It brings in some type of raw material, adds value, and then you're able to sell that to a customer at a profit. So we bring water in, and we know that the quality of that water is good. So when it hits here, we add the syrup and everything to it. So now a 15-cent cup of ice, I can now sell to this young guy for $2.75. So you see, I've added profit in this value stream. Now, where do we fit from a cybersecurity perspective? Again, we want to ensure that the quality, the integrity, the availability, the confidentiality of the information that undergirds this value stream process is in place so that we can continue operations in a secure manner. Reduce the risk of something happening here back here. Now, could we pull this guy out of here and just take the water straight from the plumber right here? We can. And you know what? It may work great for a long time, but there are risks that's being induced here that, when something goes bad, it goes bad quickly. That's why we exist. So that's why I say, so when we look at this entire process of risk mitigation, that's where we fit in that continuum, managing risk. So when we think about cybersecurity principles, I know we've been talking about these three words. Confidentiality, principle that information or data is not disclosed to unauthorized subject. Confidentiality. You want to keep your secrets secret. Okay? That's the whole thing. Who needs to know? Who has a need to know? Very big in any organization. Just because data is there doesn't mean that everyone should have access to it. Integrity, on the other hand, is a principle that information remains trustworthy. Okay? From the time it's created to the time that somebody uses it, that it remains trustworthy. And we use different technical means to do this. Okay? We use encryption. We use different types of encryption. We use hashing, hash values, two-person or multi-factor, authentication. We also use public key infrastructure, that gives us ways of managing not only confidentiality but also integrity and availability. We want to be sure that the principle that your information is always readily accessible to authorized people, authorized subjects. Next part of this model that we talk about, remember we talked access control? Well, yeah, when we think access control, we can actually break this down into what I call your information access model. Identification, authentication, authorization, access control, and auditing. What do I mean by that? Okay? When you log into your work, your office network, I'm just going to use this analogy. And let's say you don't have cards, you're still using passwords and username passwords. Well, the first thing you do, you type in your username, L. Watlington. You know what that has done? That has just identified me on the network. Great, right? Okay, so I've been identified. What is the next thing I have to do? Type in a password. I type in my password. Go fast, really fast, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, that password is associated with my identity, so that's how I get authenticated on the network, because my password, it's in a hashed password file somewhere, probably on a Linux server. It says, oh, okay, I recognize this password, or the hash of that password, and that password is associated with L. Watlington. So now I am authenticated. I am on the network. Just because I've been authenticated, does that mean I can go everywhere I want to go on my company's network? No. I have to be authorized to go certain places. There's certain folders I can go to because I have the rights to privileges based on my role as an ISM, an Information System Security Manager, okay, that I can get to certain information, certain data stores. Next thing, okay, I'm authorized to go to, let's say to DAT server number 1. Just because I can get to this DAT server number 1, data server number 1, does that mean that I have access to every file on there? Again, answer, no. This is where we control access, all based on privileges, based on who has the right to get to there. So I've been identified, I've been authenticated, I've been authorized to go certain places, and now once I'm there, I have access to do certain things, to have access to certain data elements in that folder, and then I get audited. So that we can track and record all the usages, everything that people have done on the network. So that's our information access model. But again, this is tied directly back to our CIA triad. For some reason, my remote control stopped working, but it's okay. There we go. We got it back. I think. Ha! Yes, we do. So when we talk about access, one of the things we want to think about, subjects, objects, and access. Because you're going to hear these terms quite a bit. What is a subject? A subject is an active entity that can assess a passive object, okay, to be able to receive information or anything about that object. An object is a passive entity. We got an active entity and a passive entity that provides information to a subject. You're like, what did you just say, man? What did you just say? Think about it this way. You have a database that's sitting on a server. In that database, it has your name, social security number, phone number, right? Those are all objects. Those are passive objects that's sitting in a database. Now, who can get access to that? That's what a subject is. Now, a subject could be me, a person. It could also be another computer, another information system. Or it could also be a script that's running a process on behalf of another entity. You know, so I can have a script set up that every night I want to go out and I want to pull that data out of the database. So now that script becomes an active entity that's trying to reach a passive object. Objects and entity. You know, the way I like to describe it, sitting in my refrigerator right now, in the freezer, is some butter pecan ice cream. That is an object. Passive object. It's just sitting there in that little tub. Now me, I'm an active entity that want to go partake of that ice cream. However, there's one problem. Okay? My wife is providing access control. She is standing in front of the refrigerator, you know, looking like, you know, Tupac. Like, oh, you think you're going to get to the ice cream. She's controlling access. And access is the transfer of an information object to a subject. Okay? That's all access is. So what do? I use my best Barry White voice. Hey, babe, you know I love you. And you know I love you even more if you would just let me have just a little bit of that ice cream. And you know what she does? She just melts. Not like the ice cream, but no. And here you go, honey. Here you go, sugar. And she gives me a little bowl of ice cream. And I walk away. Thank you, baby. Because she provided access, the transfer of an object to a subject. You may say, wow, that's a long explanation. But it's critical to understand that because as we move forward, especially with security, as we start talking about security controls, it's important to understand that the purpose of 99% of these security controls is to either allow or block the access of a subject being able to get to an object. Okay, yeah, that's so when you look at like NIST 853, which by the way is a reference in this class that you're actually going to be using this either this week or next week in one of your assignments. So when you look at NIST 853, it is a set of over 900 security controls, from access control, awareness and training controls, auditing controls, security assessments, and the list goes on and on and on. And these are the control families. So you see a lot of controls, and then not only do you have controls, you have sub-controls. So let's say in the AC family, access control, there are 23 actual controls, you know, like AC2. But then there's over 89 sub-controls. So now I got AC2-1, AC2-2, AC2-5. So you see the number of controls are huge. But what are these controls doing? For the most part, they are controlling the access of a subject being able to get to an object. And that's why we put these controls in place. So when we think about controls, I'm just going to kind of give you a quick rundown on how to read security controls. So I'm going to take a control out of the AC family. AC2, which is account management. That is the control ID, AC2, and the title. The title is account management. So when you open up that PDF, that with NIST 853, this is what you're going to see for one of the controls. Now, actually, I've abbreviated this. I don't have the whole control in there. Now, the NIST, the National Institution of Standards and Technology, that's what NIST means. So what they provide is the verbiage of the control. What does that control do? The organization, A, identifies and selects the following types of information system accounts to support organizational mission and business. And there's different accounts. B, it assigns account manager. C, it establishes conditions for group and role membership. And this list actually goes on down to about H. But that's what your control is. That's what this control does. Now, not only do you have the control, but then they also give you some supplemental guidance. What the supplemental guidance does, it helps explain in a little more human verbiage what the control is. So this supplemental guidance is telling us that the information system account types include, for example, individual accounts, shared accounts, group accounts, system accounts. You can have emergency accounts, temporary accounts. So it's saying you can possibly have all of these account types. Based on those account types, now how do I manage those accounts? So that's what this AC2 control is doing. Now, a couple of the projects that you're going to do, you're going to go into the NIST, into these families of controls, and you're going to extract some controls and to say, I'm going to use this control to meet this requirement so that I can ensure that I'm meeting confidentiality, integrity, or availability. So what this is going to do is going to tie together excuse me, our cybersecurity principles with the controls that are put in place to ensure that we meet CIA. So I just want to introduce you to security controls briefly, especially the 853 family of controls. Now, we talked about countermeasures, okay? So when we think about security controls, we're going to look at it kind of as a continuum, all right? So you have an information system. It has critical information on it. It's in here, and there are always vulnerabilities. There is no system that's 100% without vulnerabilities. And over on this side, you have threats. And what do these threat agents want to do? They want to exploit these vulnerabilities. So yeah, they're constantly trying to, how can I get into this information system? What do we do from a cybersecurity perspective? Well, we implement security controls, 853 or whatever family or framework you may use. So it could be that we're going to harden our network equipment. We're going to use some physical controls where we're going to put those keyboard covers over our keyboards to ensure that we reduce the risk of damage to physical hardware. We're going to be sure we're using some type of antivirus so that we can try to block any malicious software, malicious malcode coming in. So so we put different controls in place to mitigate or to reduce the impacts of these threats trying to get to a vulnerability. But what happens? And here again, nothing is 100% in the business that we do. So there's still always some type of residual risk, meaning our controls didn't meet everything. So we still have some residual risk. What do we do with that risk? A couple of things we can do, going back to our risk mitigation strategy. One, we can accept it. Say, you know what? We have mitigated this risk down low enough to where the value of this information doesn't outweigh the cost to put additional security controls in place. Basically what I'm saying is you don't want to spend $100 to secure a $10 asset. And it's easy to do that if you're not careful, where your cost of your security controls outweigh the cost or the life cycle of your information, especially now because information is very perishable now. If it's something that's only going to be here for, sometimes a week, maybe a day, some information is only around for minutes, especially in the DevSecOps environment, cloud environment, where they'll spin up a virtual machine for 20 minutes to do a task, and that machine is gone forever. So we're not going to spend a lot of money trying to protect something that's only going to be around. So we may just say, hey, you know what? From a company perspective, we can accept that risk. Or, again, we'll do a business case analysis, cost-benefit analysis to see how much can we pay to mitigate that risk. How much more do we need how much more do we need to invest in controls to mitigate that risk? So that's how security controls and countermeasures come into play and operate together. All right, guys, like I say, so week one, I know kind of covered a lot of things here, but really it all still boils down to the basics: risk management, CIA, and common some fundamental or foundational principles. Have a great week one. If you have issues with the assignments, just let me know. Now, I will tell you with assignments, guys, use the rubric. Yes, that rubric, please use it. I'll probably send out some things in our announcements. But if you stick to the rubric, let's say if it's a paper you have to write, you know where the best place to start? You take the rubric and you make every rubric item a subtitle of your paper. And then you start filling in after that. Because that way, you know and I know that you've covered everything in the rubric. It makes the assignment go much easier for you. It makes grading go easier for me, and it works. You don't, and you know, so you don't have to try to freestyle it. You know, I will tell you, for me, more isn't better. No. You know, sending me 15 pages of cut and paste gobbledygook. No, I don't care about that. If you can meet the requirement of the rubric, you know, 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 pages, and get your information into that, get it to me, I'm telling you, you're going to do well. You are going to do well in every assignment. All right, guys, have a great week, and we will see you in week 2.